You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and then awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Hello, and welcome to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and we have a fantastic show in store for you today. Joining me from Chicago is Awilda Rivera Prignano. Now, Awilda is an author. I'll talk about that and the books she has published in a minute, but it's very special because she has published a bilingual children's book that we'll be talking about quite a bit today. It's a wonderful story. And Awilda was born and raised in the Windy City. I just gave away what that was, so people can check their geography. Born and raised in the Windy City, in the state commonly known as the land of Lincoln, Awilda has always had a passion for writing, and since childhood dreamed of one day becoming a published author. Her dream came true when she was published in the anthologies Follow It Through, Obstacles Equal Opportunities, published in June 2017, The Real Journey of the Empowered Mom Boss from February 2018, and Your Shift Matters, Resistance to Resilience from November of 2018. Now, besides writing, Awilda enjoys traveling and exploring new places. As a lifelong learner, she will soon be embarking on an international adventure and will be living and working in different countries around the world. Awilda engages very easily with everyone she meets, and her mission is to inspire, through her storytelling, the values of love, kindness, and compassion for others. Awilda, welcome to Decide to Transform. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me here today with you and your listeners, Tomas. I'm so happy to be here with you.
This is going to be fun. Yes, and a bilingual children's book is something that I think will interest so many people, and there are a number of bilingual listeners here on this show. So the title of the children's book in English is Loving Lulu, and Lulu Amorosa in Spanish. So you have published in anthologies other books that we mentioned in the bio. So what prompted you to write Loving Lulu? And what's it about?
Well, like you mentioned, I have been published in anthologies. It has always been my dream to be published on my own, though. So when I was really focusing on my own writing and creating a brand of my own, I thought about a children's book first. It's always been something that I've had a passion for. And I had a few little stories written when I was creating the little character of Lulu. I always saw her as a little bilingual girl because I grew up bilingual. I grew up immersed speaking English and Spanish. And so, the stories are all influenced from personal experiences, things in my life, people in my life that have inspiration. So the first story that I chose to move forward with into developing into this book is really inspired by our journey, my family's journey with my mother who has dementia.
Okay.
So I really kind of took that story of what we experienced, what we went through, and really her transformation, because a person who experiences dementia, they go through this transformation. And of course, as a family member, and for me, being my mom's caregiver, I had to kind of figure out a way how was I going to stay in touch, stay connected, try to still be present for her. And so with the story of Loving Lulu, it's that same journey, but really through the lens of a child. Because if you think about what kids see and hear, all they really understand is that there are changes happening. Something different is happening. You know, they may hear the word dementia, but maybe they don't really understand that word dementia. And even in my story, I don't use the word dementia in the story.
Right.
And I don't use it in the dedication either, because it was important for me when I was creating this story that it be relatable to really any family who's going through any type of change or dealing with some type of, you know, it could be a disability, it could be someone who's suffered a stroke or something where the communication sometimes is stalled because, you know, there's misunderstanding or some confusion about, you know, how can you still continue to have a relationship with this other person. So with Lulu, you know, when she, you know, noticed that there were changes happening, she just thought within herself, well, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can do so that my abuelita still knows that I still love her? And, you know, the story of loving Lulu is, I'm sorry if I feel like I'm all over the place with this, but
Oh,
the
you're
story of
fine.
loving Lulu is Lulu and her abuelita, they spend a lot of time together
Hmm.
because, you know, Lulu's mom is working, and Lulu and her abuelita, they cook together, and, you know, she helps her abuelita taking care of other children, and her abuelita teaches her Spanish. So when she finds herself where she's trying to figure out, well, how can I show my abuelita? How can I let her know that I still love her? She thinks back of all the things they did together and how really loved and special it made her feel. So it's really through her own resourcefulness that she kind of figures out, well, let me try to do these things with her, and that may help her to remember those feelings as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting, and you know, listeners out there, I've been through Loving Lulu and Lulu Amorosa, and you know, Awilda, as you just said, it's about the challenge to stay connected when somebody is not able to relate in the same way that they once were. Now, what caused you to write this through the lens of a child?
You know, it's funny, when I was going through this myself, it took a lot of deep thought. You know, I had to process. It's almost like you have to process the loss of the person that you knew
Mhm.
and be ready to embrace the new normal, you know, how they are now, how you see them now. Um, and I remember going through all those stages of anger and frustration and denial, right?
Mhm.
Because you try to figure out, how do I fit into this person's life? How did they fit into mine? And the reason why I wanted to try to write about this through the lens of a child is sometimes people, when they're um, kind of facing an obstacle that they just don't know what to do,
Mhm.
sometimes it's just, you have to almost go back to this, you know, searching deep within and just really just looking for that answer that, um, I don't want to say that it's like really simple, because it's not. It's a process that you have to be open to, kind of do some real soul searching and search from within yourself. But I wanted to kind of have that message shared through the lens of a child, because like in Lulu's case, she just asked herself, what is it that I can do? What is it that I
Mhm.
can do? And it just took her kind of remembering and recollecting about the moments that they shared and how it made her feel. And sometimes I find with adults, and it could just be maybe in a regular relationship where there's been a misunderstanding or some kind of conflict, and sometimes the relationships are broken because people refuse to go back and kind of remember and be, you know, and say to themselves, well, where did things start falling apart? Like, what happened? So I just thought, kind of like flipping that switch and just starting from a simple children's story. It can maybe be something that's shared to the intended audience, which is children. But honestly, my hope as the author is that the message is embraced by the grown-up that's with the child as well.
Yes, and yeah, as we're talking, that's something that really strikes me is adults can go back. They can, people talk about an inner child, but it really, the questions are universal, aren't they? The questions, how can I love?
Yes,
Mhm. Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
that really struck
I'm
me.
sorry, you were going to say something?
No, yeah, it really struck me when I was reading the question, how can I express love here? And I really like that you just mentioned that this is for children, but it's also for adults that are with them.
Right. Well, and the thing about that too, Tomas, is that we also, when we think about how can we communicate and connect with another person, we always think about what is it that we can hear versus, with speaking. And sometimes people struggle, right, with how to find those words, how to, especially when there's been a conflict or a disagreement or something. It's almost like they
Yeah.
don't know, well, how can I reconnect? How can I let this person know I still love them? And we're given these gifts of sight, of sound, of touching, of tasting. And so going back to with my journey with my mom, it was like almost like going through and trying to remember, well, what were some of the things that made her happy? And she and my dad, they used to love to go dancing. They used to love to host parties. So I knew that
Mhm.
music and food, music and food for me growing up, it's what I knew in my
Mhm.
house. And it was just as simple as I thought, well, maybe I'm going to play some YouTube videos for her. And I started to do that, and she started to respond to them. And so it kind of gave me ideas. Well, what are some things that I could just start doing with her and start to communicate to her using these other senses? Because her dementia was so advanced, she didn't really hold the capacity to have a conversation or anything like that. But I learned that I was able to reach her doing some of these other activities with her.
Mhm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I love that. That was something that very much struck me as I was reading Loving Lulu, is the music and food. So culturally, walk us through some of that. What kind of music, what kind of food?
Oh my gosh. So my parents were both from Puerto Rico.
All right.
So obviously salsa, merengue, all the dances, right? My mother was an amazing cook,
Mm.
and my mom really shared love through her cooking, not just for the family, but really everybody she fed. So it's one of those things that it wasn't until I was much older that I was able to understand that sometimes with my mom, she was the disciplinarian in the family, right? She was the one that laid down the law, but she really showed us love
Mhm.
through her cooking. And my parents really through their love of entertaining. Our house was always an open house where people can come over. It's really like things like that growing up, you don't really realize this is how they're really expressing and showing love for us and for other people. But really, it's something that I can recollect and have memories now. And I'm like, you know what? They were really amazing how they really opened their house and would express love in that way to so many people.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'm picturing, especially with the year that we've had and COVID-19 and a global pandemic, I'm picturing just a giant party. In fact, I honestly, I'm picturing a giant street party, and here in Phoenix, it's with taco trucks. But yeah, right? What's your favorite dish from childhood? What did your mom make that you most love?
Oh my gosh. My mom's cooking was amazing,
All
but
right.
definitely the the holidays was the best time of the year.
All right. And is there a particular holiday dish that really
You
stands
froze up
out?
a little.
Oh, I did. Well, is there a particular holiday dish that really stands out to you?
So my mom, during the holidays, she would make pasteles. I don't know if you're familiar with pasteles, but her
Hmm.
pasteles, pernil. She had an amazing potato salad. Um, Really, my mom's cooking was so delicious. She'd make coquito. I don't know if you've heard of coquito, which is the Puerto Rican eggnog. She was known for
Yes.
that.
Oh, all right.
um, so much. Like the holidays were such a big, I always think of my mother around the holidays because she was one of those people. She'd be cooking for days, and she'd be cooking not just for us, but for everybody. She would have people request food. Her Puerto Rican rice was amazing.
Mm.
Um, and I miss that. I
Oh,
miss
yeah.
her cooking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's so amazing how food and music are in fact languages, and it's quite easy for us as human beings to communicate with them. Yeah, I just I wanted to talk a little bit about food because I know some of those
Yeah,
dishes myself. Yeah, absolutely. And now, and the inspiration for Loving Lulu was your
yeah.
experience with your mother. And so how long had she been experiencing dementia? Yeah, what was that like?
I From the time when she was first diagnosed up until the end of her life, it was almost 6 years
Mm,
that we'd been on this journey with her. When she was diagnosed with a mild to moderate. We had started to notice that she was being forgetful. Some of her habits were changing. So it really took, you know, it took a while to get her properly diagnosed. Um, so a couple of years though after she had been diagnosed, we had decided where she needed to be in assisted living
mhm.
because her condition had advanced to the
Oh,
point that she really couldn't be home alone. I was living with her at the time as her caregiver, but I was also working full time. So because she really couldn't be home alone anymore for even a few hours, it was just too dangerous of a situation. She needed to go to assisted living where she would be able to receive full-time care.
okay.
And that was difficult. That was a difficult decision.
Mhm.
But I know that, it was the best one for us and for her.
Okay. Yeah, and now this is a specific type of dementia that is not Alzheimer's, correct? Would you tell us a little bit more about that? Because there may be people that aren't aware of this. The specific type of
Well,
dementia, yeah.
there's different types of dementia. There's different stages of dementia. I'm not really that technical of an expert, but my mother had been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. All forms of dementia obviously affect memory. They
Mhm.
affect your ability to do things, to function normally. But the biggest thing that distinguishes Lewy body dementia is they also suffer through hallucinations. um, that's really all I can really say about. I can't really say anything more specific than that,
Mhm.
other than there is different stages of dementia, so they slowly kind of progress to a point where um, they're not able to. They don't really have a capacity to engage or converse or obviously recognize, do things for themselves. Almost like you're going backwards in your life, right? Instead of
Right.
kind of going back to that point where you'll need more assistance doing things to be able to go on.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and thank you for walking us through that because I know there are a number of listeners out there that have dealt with something very similar. In fact, a number of people that I know are currently dealing with a similar situation with various forms of dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's or Lewy body dementia, like you mentioned. And one of the messages of Lulu Amorosa and Loving Lulu is that there are so many ways that you can express love. And to me, the book is all about the power of connection. So, what prompted you in your life to begin to want to express the value of love through your storytelling?
Well, obviously with my journey with my mother, it was important because she had been transforming into this person that I felt like I was losing, but physically she was still there. this
Mhm.
this person that was still there is important to me, and I knew that she would have kind of those moments when she would remember, and it was really just really soul searching within me. It was just like, how can I make my visits with her count? Like, how am I able to have some quality for her as well as for me? So I was able to, I reached out because I honestly didn't know what to do. So I reached out through Catholic charities. I reached out through other caregiving organizations. And that's the biggest thing. And I would say this to anyone who's going on this journey with an elderly person is don't try to do it yourself, because it's a difficult thing to go through. Reach out. There's other people that are going through the same thing that you can connect with, and really kind of exchange ideas and try to kind of sort through it, because it can be very frustrating. It's not an easy journey. So it was really just kind of starting with playing music, and then I would bring her some food. She loved rice. She would always ask for rice.
All
And I
right.
found a restaurant close to me that would make really delicious rice. And her eyes would open up and she would get so excited. So when I saw how she responded to certain things, I'm like, this is what I could do. This is what I could do to make our visits, special for her, something that she would look forward to. Because one of the things when you're dealing with a person with dementia is you have no idea. You can try to understand through reading a book or whatever, but you don't really know what is it that they're going through. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was really important to me that the time that I spent with her, that just try to give her the quality to make that time just quality, just pleasant, just try to bring her some happiness in those moments that I was with her.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds as though you found a number of ways to do just that. You mentioned music and food. Are there other ways that you were able to connect?
I took for Christmas time, we would decorate cookies together. I brought her little coloring pictures to color in. I would bring her, I would show her pictures on my phone of family members, especially the little children, her grandchildren, or great grandchildren, so she would see them. I don't know that she really understood that they were related to her, but it would make her happy to see
Yeah.
pictures of babies. No, I'm serious. It's just like
Hmm.
you don't really know, but it kind of the smile on her face. My mother always, she would take care of other children. So babies and
Okay.
children would always bring a smile to her face. Um, so it was just kind of really doing simple things like that. Um, she wasn't really interested. Some of the things we would love to do together was like go to the movies and things like
Oh.
that. But
Hmm.
her I noticed, like, as her condition was advancing, her attention span for things like that, like she wouldn't sit and watch a movie. Like whatever we did, it had to be kind of in short little intervals because she would just want to move on to something else. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. But it sounds like, though, that you found other creative and fun ways to relate and to communicate. And then the book, Loving Lulu, Lulu Amorosa, those are available currently right now. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. So if you visit my website, lovinglulu.com, I have the books available in a soft cover and a hardcover. I also have, as a free gift on my website, when you order a book, you can grab a free copy of In the Kitchen with Awilda, which is a little cookbook I created from some of our favorite recipes that we were able to put together, and just share them as a thank you gift for people for purchasing the book. It's available in English and in Spanish, so En la Cocina con Abuelita in Spanish.
All right.
And I do want to mention also that a portion of the proceeds of the sale of the book, it will be donated to the Lewy Body Dementia Foundation. I felt it was really important. I really wanted to do that in honor of my mother, who is a big, influence and inspiration for me for the book.
I love that. Okay. Yes, and it's the Lewy Body Dementia Association. The portion of the proceeds will go to that, and the website address is www.lovinglulu.com. All right. So everyone hop on and get In the Kitchen with Abuelita, en la cocina con Abuelita. Vamos a disfrutar de toda la comida. Y tengo hambre. Okay, I love it.
Sí,
Yes, sí,
sí, sí.
exactly. Yes. So for those who did not understand what I just said, yeah, hop on and get a copy of In the Kitchen with Abuelita, loving recipes, and I'm hungry. That's what I just said.
You
But we're not done. Just
know.
because we're hungry does not mean we're done. Awilda, I have more to ask you because
Okay.
you mentioned in your introduction in the bio, international traveling and adventure. So you've got an adventure planned. Would you tell us about
Yes,
that?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, it's always been, I've never traveled internationally. I mean, I have on cruise ships, but to me, that's kind of like you get a snippet of another country. I want to really immerse myself and explore and be an adventurer.
Mhm.
So my plan is to be able to work from wherever I have a laptop, writing stories.
Yeah.
And I really want to visit different countries and just be immersed in the culture and the people and just be able to write about all of those things that I don't even know about yet. Um, I really do. I really have a passion for that. I have a passion for people. I feel like, my whole life I've always been here. So I'm really looking forward to being able to go out and explore. I signed up to be a part of a group through a company, which right now, kind of where all that's at with COVID, it's kind of like, um, I'm not really sure what's happening with that right now. So right now I'm
Yeah.
thinking like it's something I'm going to have to do on my own.
Mm.
So it's something I'm preparing for. And obviously, right at this moment, I'm not able to do it. But, I kind of put it out there to the universe because that's my dream and that's my goal. And I know that that's kind of the direction my life is going to go for the second half of my life, is to be traveling to other countries and exploring and having that adventure and, giving me new stories to write about, giving me different things to write about.
This sounds fun. And yes, I could hold a conversation with you about this for a long, long time. But let's continue here. we won't be going for a long, long time. Those listeners out there, this is not going to be a 4-hour conversation. However, Awilda, where are you planning to go? Where are you most excited to go to?
Oh my gosh, Tomas, I want to go everywhere. I think
Mm-hmm.
I want to start in Europe. My dream, I need to start in Europe, to go to Italy, go to France, go to Spain, all those places. I want to see Africa. I want to
Mm-hmm.
see Asia. I want to see South America. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like, I really just, I don't want to limit myself. I'm just kind of open to everything right now. I think about Morocco, I think about, um, I think of like so many places. Being in Chicago, well, lately it hasn't been as many, but I meet so many people from all over the world that come into the city for
Yeah.
different reasons, for business, for conventions and things. And they'll share with me stories about their countries. And I think about, oh my gosh, I want to be over there. It's one thing to see it on TV or watch videos or, you know, but I just want to be there. I want to be living it. That's how I see it.
All right. Well, and I love that. I love that. Just there's something about the immersion, and again, we're back to the theme of this show, connection, and just a human connection and interaction. Now, how long do you envision yourself traveling? Do you envision yourself doing it for the next 20, 30, 40 years? Or
Of course. I
mm,
mean, at the age that I am, once I'm able to do it, if that's how I can live the rest of my life, then I'll be very happy, to be honest with you.
mhm,
If I can live the rest of my life and just be how do they say, a wanderer, a meanderer, all around
yeah.
the globe, kind of like globe trotting,
Hmm.
that's how I see myself. If I can live out of two suitcases, a suitcase, two suitcases the rest of my life, I'm good with that. I don't need to have things. The world is my thing.
Hmm.
the
Oh, yeah.
the and that's how I see it. I really do.
That's fun. Okay, so I love that. The world is my thing. We don't need to have things, complicated things, but yeah, you can travel, and that's really interesting. In your bio, that is one of the things that really jumped out to me. Now, you have, despite the fact that you've not been over to Europe, not yet anyway, and you will go. Um, how long have you been yearning to travel like this?
My whole life.
All right.
When I was a very young child, I loved writing, but I
Mhm.
always knew like I wanted to be able to go and explore other places. I thought about for a long time having a career like in the airline industry where I'd
Mhm.
be kind of traveling around. I don't know. It's funny when you're a little kid, you kind of see the world different, right? You just see
Mhm.
you think about the world and you think about what's attainable, like what are some things you can do. And I can remember I used to dream and fantasize about that, like I just want to be traveling and going to places. And those are two things that really have stuck with me since childhood, is writing and traveling.
Yeah.
So not necessarily that I want to be a travel writer, but I want to be writing as I travel. Does that make sense?
It makes a
Because I
lot of
tell
sense.
people a lot of times I want to be traveling and they think like, oh, you want to be a travel writer. And I'm like, no, not necessarily. I just want to be kind of working from wherever I am or in the world, on whatever project I'm working on. So it may be about my travels. It may be about other things. Loving Lulu, my intention is to grow that into a series. So I have other stories. Lulu, this first book is about her and her Awilita. But, Lulu has pets and Lulu has friends and Lulu
Hmm.
has lots of other adventures that she would like to share in more books. So my intention is to kind of grow this into a series. So those are all things I want to be working on, one day as I'm traveling or wherever I'm at in the world, I want to be, like I said, I want to be where I have laptop and Wi-Fi, I can work, right? And I know
Hmm.
you know that because
I
you kind
do.
of had that lifestyle before where you're just kind of like working where you're at, right?
Yes. Yes, and it's really a lot of fun. Now, where the Wi-Fi is great, it's very, very doable. And the listeners of this show, some of my earlier shows from the Om Times Radio were recorded with a very, very poor internet connection in Mexico. Happily, the podcasting universe allowed us to continue and allowed us to record all of those. So wherever you wind up, Awilda, I hope that there's good Wi-Fi because it really is a possibility. It really is. And I love to hear when people are expressing that and embracing the limitlessness rather than arguing for your limitations, just saying, no, I don't need this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to experience life. And you can do it because you've always been a writer since you were a little
Mhm.
girl. You mentioned, right?
Mhm. Yes, yes, exactly. I've always kind of had that imagination.
Hmm.
But it's funny, like honestly, as a kid, it's like I had that fantasy, I had that imagination, but because other people around me didn't have it, I wasn't always open about sharing it. Does that make sense? And it's
Yes.
not until I've become older that I've learned to just, you know what, this is mine. This is what makes me different. This is what makes me me. So now that I'm much older and I'm in that like second stage of my life, I'm like, I'm going to go after the things I'm passionate about. I want to go after the things that are
Yeah.
important to me. And that's
Yes.
why the travel, especially now with so much uncertainty going on in the world, yes, I know that it's stalled for now, but it's on the forecast. It's going to happen. It's not going to stop me. So
Right.
it can't happen right now, right this minute, but it will happen. And that's how I see it.
Yes. Well, and it will happen. For those of you that may be listening to this years from now, we're recording this in December 2020 during the COVID-19 outbreak. In fact, actually, a second global wave of this outbreak. So travel has been curtailed, stalled, otherwise squashed for a long time. But this is not going to remain the case at all.
That's
And we will
right. No,
travel. Yes, and and
we
and
will.
write and travel. And I love the fact that you mentioned that Loving Lulu is going to be a series down the line. So remind our listeners again how they can get their hands on the book.
So they can go to my website to lovinglulu.com and grab a copy. It's available either as a soft cover and a hardcover. And once they make their purchase, they can grab a free copy of In the Kitchen with Awilda. That is a digital book, and that will be delivered immediately to the email that's provided. The books are also available online pretty much everywhere where books are sold. So on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. But the offer of a free cookbook, that's only available through my website.
All right. So everybody go to that website. All right.
Yeah.
Lovinglulu.com. Okay. This is fantastic. I love this. And it's just so much fun to have authors on the show because people have such creative gifts to share with the world. And it's an honor for me to be able to give this space for you to talk about it and what's important to you. And I very much enjoyed our time here today. So, Awilda, anything else that you would like to say to our listeners before we wrap up today?
Sure. First of all, I do want to thank you again for this opportunity to be able to share a bit of my story and the story of Loving Lulu. One of the most important additions, because the way when I was developing the project, it did evolve from what it was when it started as a
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
One of the most important additions that we added was a call to action. So right when the story is done, Lulu asks the reader the question, now it's your turn. What are some ways in which you can express and show love? So that's one thing I would really love for everyone to think about is how do you show love in your life? And not just how do you show love, but how do you accept love as well?
Ah,
Because I think
yes.
it's so important that it's not just about giving, but it's also about learning how to receive it, because you may never know. Someone may be trying to show you love in a way that you may not be receiving it that way. So, just be open, to receiving it as well as giving it when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I really love that you said that. That is something that a lot of people do, and we've talked about it right here on this show in various episodes. People that give and give and give, but they're not willing to accept. They're not willing to receive. Yeah, so I'm very happy that you mentioned that. It's a critical
Yes.
component. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It really is. Well, this has been so much fun, Awilda. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today. And everybody, get their hands on a copy of Loving Lulu, or Lulu Amorosa in Spanish, at lovinglulu.com. So it is available on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, etc., as you've said. However, the free, and I do mean free, gratis ebook, In the Kitchen with Awilda, the recipes, the cookbook is only available on lovinglulu.com. So everybody, get their hands on that. I'm going to be doing that. I'm looking forward to this. So, Awilda, thank you so much again for joining me. This has been such a pleasure today.
Thank you so much, Tomas. It's been such an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been my pleasure. And this has been Awilda Rivera Prignano here on Decide to Transform. So thank you all for tuning in, as always, and we will see you here on the next episode. Everybody have a great day.